Welcome back to Mr. English Lab, the channel where we talk about meaningful ideas in clear, natural English and help you grow not only as a language learner, but also as a thinker. In today's episode, we're going to talk about something that affects almost everyone, even if we don't always notice it: dopamine. Now, dopamine might sound like a complicated scientific word, something you only hear in biology class or see in psychology videos. But here's the truth: dopamine isn't just about science or the brain. It's about behavior. It's about desire, distraction, habit, attention, motivation, and all the little invisible forces that shape how we live our daily lives. Think about your normal day. How many times do you check your phone for notifications without even thinking? How often do you scroll through social media, open new tabs, or switch between apps or tasks, even when you're not really enjoying it? There's always that small pull inside, right? That feeling that maybe the next thing will feel better. Maybe the next post, the next message, the next click. That little whisper, maybe this will be more interesting, that's dopamine at work. But here's something most people don't know: dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure. It doesn't make you feel happy after you get something you want. Instead, it's the chemical of wanting. It shows up before you get the reward. Dopamine doesn't say, "That felt good." It says, "Go get it." It pushes you to chase, to look, to reach for more. It's what makes you want to check that message, finish that level, or look for something new. And once you understand this difference, the difference between wanting and having a lot of things in your life suddenly make more sense. So today, we're not going to study dopamine like a scientist. We're going to look at it as a lens, a way to see our own behavior more clearly. Because in a world that's full of noise, speed, and endless temptation, where everything is fighting for your attention, the ability to stop, pause, and reflect, even for a few seconds, is becoming more and more important. So here's a question to think about as we begin. How much of what you do every day is something you choose to do? And how much is just habit, routine, or impulse? When was the last time you asked yourself, "Why am I doing this? What am I really hoping to feel?" This episode isn't about blaming yourself or feeling bad. It's not about giving up joy or trying to become a perfectly self-controlled robot. It's about awareness. It's about curiosity. It's about learning to notice, to see the patterns, the cravings, the moments of restlessness, and to ask better questions. Because once you start to see what's happening, you can start to change it. And once you change it, even a little bit, you begin to live with more freedom and less force. So let's start. Not with hard science, not with strict rules, but with something deeper, a closer look at ourselves. The truth about dopamine starts with one simple thing: attention. And right now, you're already giving yours right here in this moment. So, what is dopamine really? Let's talk about it honestly. Not the clickbait version you see online. Not the short dopamine detox videos or the self-help posts that promise to reset your brain in 7 days. No. Let's take a real look, simple, clear, and true to how it actually works. Here's the first thing you need to know: dopamine is not pleasure. Let me say that again because it's really important. Dopamine is not pleasure. It's not what makes you feel good when you eat your favorite dessert, when someone compliments you, or when you finally finish that big project you've been putting off. That warm, satisfied feeling, the calm happiness, the comfort, the joy that comes from other chemicals in your brain, like serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin. Dopamine is something different. It's about anticipation, about wanting, not having. You can think of dopamine as your brain's motivational fuel. It's what makes you move. It creates that little spark of desire, that feeling that something out there is worth reaching for. The next bite, the next episode, the next message, the next goal. Dopamine is future-focused. It doesn't say, "That felt good." It says, "Go get it." And the stronger the dopamine signal, the louder that voice becomes. Sometimes it's just a gentle whisper, you might like this. Other times, it's a shout, you need this. You'll feel better once you have it. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Dopamine isn't focused on what's happening right now. It's focused on what your brain expects will happen next. It's like a prediction machine, always guessing what kind of reward might be waiting for you. Let me give you an example. Imagine you walk into a cafe and smell fresh coffee. Instantly, your brain lights up. You haven't even ordered yet, you're not drinking it, but you want it. Why? Because your brain remembers what that smell means. From past experience, it's learned, this smell equals something good is coming. So even before you take a sip, your brain releases dopamine. It's not reacting to the coffee itself. It's reacting to the possibility of the coffee, the expectation of pleasure. And that's one of dopamine's biggest roles, learning. Every time you experience something that feels good, your brain remembers what came before it, the smell, the sound, the place, even the time of day. So the next time those same signals appear, your brain sends out dopamine early, like it's cheering you on. Hey, last time this happened, it was great. Let's go get it again. That's how habits form. Not because you think about them logically, but because your brain connects emotions, memories, and rewards. It's a system built on repetition and expectation. But here's the twist, dopamine isn't always right. Sometimes it overestimates how good something will feel. You get that craving, you chase the thing, you finally get it, and then you feel disappointed. Not because you didn't get what you wanted, but because the real experience didn't match what your brain predicted. It's like chasing the memory of something amazing and ending up with a weaker version. And what does your brain do next? It says, try again. Maybe next time it'll feel better. So you scroll again, you buy again, you eat again, you chase again. That's the dopamine loop, the cycle of craving and chasing that keeps repeating. And this loop is everywhere in modern life. We're surrounded by things designed to grab our attention and give us quick rewards, notifications, likes, ads, videos, sugar, shopping, games. Each one promises instant gratification, a little hit of excitement. But what we're really feeding most of the time isn't pleasure, it's anticipation. Fast food, quick likes, endless scrolling. They give us a quick rush, a tiny spark of excitement, but they rarely give us anything that lasts. And yet, our brains, powered by dopamine, keep whispering, maybe the next thing will do it. Maybe this one will finally feel right. It's not your fault. This is how the system was built, to keep you curious, to keep you searching, to keep you moving toward reward, whether that reward is truly meaningful or not. But here's something most people don't realize. Dopamine isn't only behind what we call bad habits. It also drives some of the most positive, meaningful things in life. Learning a new language, falling in love, creating art, solving a difficult problem at work. Whenever you're doing something that involves effort now for a reward later, dopamine is part of that process. That's why dopamine isn't the enemy. It's not something we need to eliminate or fight against. It's simply a natural part of our biology, a tool our brain uses to motivate us. And like any powerful tool, it can be used well or poorly, depending on how aware we are of its influence. Now, pause for a moment. Just breathe. Let that sink in. Because this is where understanding becomes power. If you know that dopamine is about prediction, craving, and movement, not satisfaction, then you can start to see your impulses for what they really are. You can begin to separate the urge from the action. You can notice that little voice saying, I need this right now, and ask yourself, do I really? Or is this just a loop I've been trained to follow? That small space, that tiny pause between the craving and the choice, is where real change begins. That's where growth lives. Not in fighting your desires, but in understanding them. Not in rejecting dopamine, but in seeing it clearly and deciding how to respond. So here's the big takeaway. Dopamine doesn't make you feel good. It makes you want to feel good. And that small difference changes everything. It's the difference between reacting and responding, between living on autopilot and living with intention. In the next part of this episode, we'll explore how all this plays out in everyday life, how dopamine shapes our habits, our focus, and even our sense of purpose. But before we go there, let me leave you with a question. When you feel that little itch, that restlessness, that urge to grab your phone, check something, eat something, or scroll a little longer, what is it you're really looking for? Is it pleasure? Relief? Escape? Connection? And are you chasing the right thing or just the next thing? Because once you start noticing your patterns, the world doesn't just look different, it feels different. And that feeling, that awareness, is where the shift begins. That's the beginning of stepping out of what we might call the dopamine-driven life. So, what does a dopamine-driven life actually look like? Well, honestly, you're probably already living it. Let me paint a familiar picture. You wake up. Before your feet even touch the floor, you're already checking your phone notifications, messages, updates. Just enough stimulation to kick your brain into gear. Maybe you scroll through a few videos or reels, short, fast, satisfying. Then coffee. Maybe two. You open your email, answer a few easy messages, skip the hard ones. Throughout the day, you bounce between tabs, tasks, and conversations, always half here, half somewhere else. Hours later, you're still working, finishing that thing you meant to start days ago. And when night finally comes, you lie down, open your phone again, not because you're excited, but because your brain is still searching for that little spark. Just one more scroll. One more post. One more tiny hit of something. Sound familiar? That's the dopamine-driven life. It's the loop we fall into when we don't see what's pulling the strings. It doesn't always look dangerous or dramatic. In fact, it can feel completely normal. And that's the tricky part. It feels like life. But if you look closely, it's often a life of chasing goals, chasing feedback, chasing something newer, faster, better, more exciting. Always moving, rarely arriving. Every time you finally catch the thing you were chasing, the satisfaction fades faster than you expect, and before you know it, you're already chasing the next thing. Let's talk about this idea of chasing for a moment. We chase likes. We chase followers. We chase little red bubbles on our screens. We chase promotions, recognition, new projects, new hobbies, new achievements. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with ambition. Growth is beautiful. Wanting to improve your life is natural. But here's the irony. We rarely feel satisfied when we actually get what we were chasing. Why is that? It goes back to what we talked about earlier. Dopamine doesn't reward the achievement. It rewards the anticipation. It's excited before the finish line, not after. So by the time you finally reach the goal, the promotion, the purchase, the praise, your brain is already moving on to the next thing. It's like running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. No matter how fast you go, you never quite arrive. And this shows up everywhere in modern life. Take productivity culture, for example. We've been trained to feel guilty when we rest and proud when we're busy, even when the busy work doesn't really matter. We treat constant activity like a badge of honor. But a lot of that drive doesn't come from purpose or clarity. It comes from the dopamine loop, that small hit of excitement every time we cross something off a to-do list, reply to an email, or finish a task. And then what happens? The inbox fills up again. The to-do list grows again. And that feeling of satisfaction, it disappears just as fast as it came. Let's talk about learning, too. Maybe you've experienced this when studying a language. You set a goal, pass the next exam, finish a textbook, memorize 50 new words this week. And when you do, it feels good for a moment. But almost immediately, your brain says, okay, what's next? Sometimes you're already planning your NE. That's dopamine again, rewarding momentum more than meaning. And it's not just about social media or work. It's part of the entire modern rhythm we live in, fast, distracted, and achievement-oriented. Now, I'm not saying this to criticize you. I'm saying it because I've seen it in myself too. I've caught myself jumping from one project to another, not because I needed more to do, but because the quiet moments between things felt uncomfortable. That silence, that stillness, can feel strange, almost heavy. So what do? We fill it with noise, with notifications, with just one more thing. But here's the real danger of the dopamine-driven life. It's not just addiction in the extreme sense, it's disconnection. Disconnection from presence, from intention, from the kind of joy that lasts longer than a few seconds. We get so used to chasing the next little spark that we forget how to feel at home in the here and now. Our attention becomes scattered, always reaching forward, never landing fully. And when that becomes our normal way of living, our days start to feel strange, busy, but not full. Stimulating, but not satisfying. That's the cost of letting dopamine run the show without awareness. It's not just about wasting time, it's about losing depth. Losing the ability to stay with something long enough to feel the real reward, the kind that comes from mastery, from connection, from genuine fulfillment. So maybe the question isn't just, what do I want? Maybe it's also, why do I want it? And even more importantly, what happens after I get it? If the answer is always, I just move on to the next thing, then maybe the chase itself needs to be questioned. Because here's a truth that's not easy to face. Not all movement is progress. Sometimes we're just running in circles, and we call it growth. So next time you catch yourself reaching for your phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes, or staying up late working on a project you don't even care about anymore, or starting a new habit just to feel productive, pause. Notice the pattern. Notice the feeling. Ask yourself, what am I really chasing right now? Pause for just a second and ask yourself, what am I really chasing right now? And is it something I truly chose or something I've been conditioned to want? That small pause, that tiny moment of self-awareness, is the first step toward living not just a dopamine-driven life, but a conscious one. Chasing versus choosing, the inner split. Have you ever reached the end of a day and realized you can't quite remember what you actually did or why you did it? You were busy, yes, maybe even productive. But if someone asked you, what truly mattered today? Would you have an answer? It's strange, isn't it? We spend so much of our time on autopilot, responding, reacting, reaching. We check our phones without thinking. We reply to messages immediately. We jump between tasks. We say yes to things we never really chose. And the odd thing is, we're not asleep. We're awake, alert, functioning, but not present. We're not really choosing, we're just following momentum. This is what I want to explore with you, that quiet but powerful tension between chasing and choosing. The inner split. The part of us that gets pulled toward instant stimulation, quick wins, and easy rewards, and the part that longs for something deeper, meaning, intention, and real connection. As we've discussed, dopamine fuels desire. It's that spark that gets us moving. But not all movement is chosen. Not all action comes from clarity or alignment. And this is where things get complicated. Because sometimes, dopamine pulls us one way, while our deeper self, that quieter inner voice, points in another. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're working on something meaningful. Maybe you're writing, studying, or creating something that truly matters to you. You're focused, present, engaged. Then suddenly, your phone buzzes. You feel that tiny jolt of curiosity. A text, a notification. Maybe someone commented on something you posted. You check it. It takes only a second, but it leads to something else. A video, another link, another scroll. And before you know it, 10 minutes are gone, and you're watching your third random video about something you weren't even thinking about earlier. What happened? You didn't choose to lose focus. You were pulled away, not by force, but by habit. By the dopamine-driven part of your brain that whispers, "This will feel good. This will be quick. This will be easy." And in that small moment, something inside you gave in. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. But here's the real question. How often does that happen in your day? How many of your actions are truly choices, and how many are just automatic responses, mental shortcuts, or conditioned behaviors? This isn't about guilt. It's not about perfection or extreme discipline. It's about awareness. About creating enough space to pause and ask, am I acting from impulse or from intention? Am I chasing this because it truly aligns with my values or because it gives me a quick dopamine hit? That question, that small act of self-inquiry, is what separates living reactively from living intentionally. Let's go a little deeper. This inner split doesn't just show up in our distractions. It also appears in our goals, our relationships, even in how we see ourselves. Sometimes we chase things because we've been taught to chase them. Success, recognition, productivity, validation. Things that the world tells us we should want, so we go after them without stopping to ask, do I actually want this? Does this even matter to me? When we finally pause long enough to ask ourselves why we're chasing certain things, the answers can feel blurry, even uncomfortable. Think about it. Have you ever reached a goal, something you worked hard for, and instead of feeling proud or fulfilled, you felt nothing? Or worse, disappointed? That's not failure. That's what happens when we chase a life that wasn't chosen by our deeper self. It's what happens when we let external rewards or dopamine-driven motivation take the wheel, instead of letting our inner compass guide us. And that inner compass, it's quiet. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It speaks through intuition, through a sense of unease, through that subtle voice that says, this isn't it, even when everything on the outside looks perfect. Learning to listen to that voice, especially in a world that's constantly loud, busy, and distracting, takes practice. It takes courage. But it leads to something rare and powerful: alignment. Alignment means your actions match your values. Your goals reflect your truth. Your habits support the kind of life you actually want to live. It's important to be honest here. Dopamine isn't the enemy. It's not bad, it's how we're wired. It's what helps us get out of bed, stay curious, and pursue meaningful things. The problem isn't dopamine itself. The problem is when we let it run the show without question. When we confuse craving with purpose. When we keep chasing the next achievement, the next project, the next little spark, believing it will finally bring lasting satisfaction. But real satisfaction, real peace, doesn't come from the chase. It comes from choice. From living in a way that reflects who you are, not just what your brain wants in the moment. So here's a reflection to sit with. How much of your daily behavior is truly intentional? And how much is just momentum? Not just in your work or habits, but in your relationships, your decisions, even in how you spend your free time. When was the last time you paused, truly paused, and asked yourself, is this mine? Is this choice coming from me or from a pattern I've never questioned? The more you notice the split between chasing and choosing, the more freedom you gain to act differently, to respond instead of react, to design your life instead of drifting through it. And that quiet moment of clarity, that's where transformation begins. Addiction, distraction, and the illusion of reward. Let's be honest, living in today's world means walking through a minefield of distractions. It's like wandering through a city where every billboard, every store window, every corner is shouting for your attention. Except now, those billboards are in your pocket. They're glowing from your screen, whispering from your laptop, blinking from your watch. They don't just shout, they sing to your brain, promising quick bursts of pleasure and satisfaction. And here's the truth. Many of these signals are designed to hijack the same dopamine system that drives your motivation. This is where addiction, distraction, and the illusion of reward all intersect. They share the same engine, dopamine. But our modern culture has learned how to exploit that engine, often without us even realizing it. Take social media, for example. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook are built to keep you hooked. Every like, every comment, every notification triggers a tiny dopamine hit, a small jolt your brain quickly learns to crave. The catch? That reward isn't steady or predictable. It's random, like a slot machine. You never know when the next jackpot will appear, so you keep checking again and again. That unpredictability sends the dopamine system into overdrive, craving more, wanting more, chasing more, even when the actual content brings little joy or meaning. And it's not just social media. Think about productivity culture, how it's shaped our relationship with work and rest. We live in a world where being busy is often seen as being valuable, where stress is worn like a badge of honor. But behind that ideal lies something deeper, a hidden dynamic powered by the same dopamine loop, that rush we feel from ticking boxes, clearing inboxes, feeling momentarily accomplished before the next wave arrives. Productivity and the illusion of progress. Productivity apps, constant email alerts, and the pressure to be always on tap directly into our dopamine-driven desire for achievement and recognition. Every completed task, every quick win gives us a small dopamine hit, a fleeting spark that makes us want to do more, check more boxes, chase the next success. But here's the catch: most of these rewards are superficial. They create the illusion of progress. You feel productive, but that feeling often distracts you from deeper, more meaningful work, the kind that requires patience, focus, and quiet effort. And because dopamine rewards anticipation more than completion, your brain doesn't linger in satisfaction. Before you've even enjoyed the last win, it's already pushing you toward the next. This is the trap of digital overstimulation. Our brains, which evolved in slow, natural environments, are now flooded with fast, flashing stimuli, constant pings, pop-ups, and scrolling feeds. That endless input doesn't just scatter our attention, it reshapes the way we think. We become more impulsive, more reactive, less comfortable with stillness. Sitting quietly with our thoughts, once a path to creativity and insight, now feels strange, even painful. But this isn't a failure of willpower. It's a natural response to a system designed not just to engage us, but to keep us hooked. That's why staying focused today isn't just hard, it's almost an act of rebellion. Choosing to slow down, to unplug, to resist the pull of endless dopamine hits, that's real power. It's the act of reclaiming your attention and, with it, your life. Compassion in a distracted world. This brings us to something crucial: empathy. So many of us struggle with distraction, overwork, and compulsive scrolling, not because we're lazy or weak, but because we're human beings trying to survive in an environment wired against our well-being. Understanding this doesn't excuse mindless habits, but it opens the door to compassion for ourselves and for others. It invites kindness instead of judgment. It reminds us that awareness, not shame, is what creates change. From awareness to intention. So, what can we actually do? Awareness is the first step, recognizing how dopamine loops work and how our culture exploits them. The next step is intentionality. Set boundaries with your technology. Create rituals that nurture focus and calm. Build habits that prioritize deep satisfaction over fleeting pleasure. It might look like turning off notifications for a few hours, scheduling moments in your day to be completely phone-free, or simply allowing yourself to be bored, to sit in silence and see what arises. Because in that space, free from constant stimulation, your brain can reset. You create room for reflection, creativity, and real calm, the kind that dopamine-driven distractions push out of reach. In a world designed to hijack your attention, choosing to focus is a radical act of freedom. Freedom from compulsive chasing. Freedom from shallow rewards. Freedom from living only on the surface. And that freedom is the gateway to a richer, more intentional life. So the next time you find yourself reaching for your phone or jumping into another task without thinking, pause. Remember, your attention is precious. Protect it. Nourish it. Own it. Because the truth about dopamine isn't in the chemical itself, it's in how you choose to respond to it. Our brains are amazing. They can change, grow, and adapt, even after years of following the same habits. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, which simply means your brain can form new connections and pathways in response to experience. So even if you've spent a long time reacting automatically to dopamine-driven urges, checking your phone too often, multitasking, chasing quick rewards, it's never too late to change. You can literally rewire your brain. At the heart of this change is one simple but powerful skill: delayed gratification. Delayed gratification means resisting the temptation of immediate pleasure so you can reach a deeper, longer-lasting reward later. It's the ability to say, not now, but later, because what comes later is more meaningful. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest skills to master, especially in our fast-paced, instant world. Everywhere we look, there's an easy hit of dopamine waiting: a new message, a like, a video, a sale, a notification. The world rewards us for reacting fast, not for slowing down. But every time you pause before acting on an impulse, something powerful happens inside your brain. You strengthen the circuits responsible for self-control and awareness. You're training your mind to choose intention over reaction. Think of it like casting a vote. Every time you resist checking your phone during a conversation, every time you stop yourself from scrolling out of boredom, every time you take a breath before reacting, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. You don't have to be perfect. What matters is consistency. Small, intentional choices made again and again build up over time, just like compound interest in a bank account. Each decision, no matter how tiny, shapes the story your brain tells about who you are and what you value. Intrinsic motivation, the power of doing it for you. There's another key part of this transformation: intrinsic motivation, the kind of motivation that comes from within, not from the outside world. Extrinsic motivation is when you chase rewards that other people give you: likes, praise, grades, money, or recognition. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is when you do something because it feels meaningful, enjoyable, or true to you. For example, learning English because you love how the language sounds and because it opens your mind to new ideas, not just to pass an exam. Exercising because you want to feel strong and alive, not just to look good for someone else. Creating something because it brings you joy, not because it'll get you attention online. When your motivation comes from within, your dopamine system starts to work differently. Instead of rewarding only the outcome, it starts rewarding the process. You begin to find pleasure in the journey itself, in learning, growing, and improving, not just in reaching the finish line. This shift builds resilience. It keeps you engaged even when progress is slow or when external rewards disappear. Because what drives you isn't applause, it's purpose. How to start rewiring your habits. So, how do you actually begin? How do you help your brain learn new patterns? One effective method is to make the new behavior easier and more rewarding. Don't rely on willpower alone. Redesign your environment to support your goals. For example, if you want to spend less time on social media, don't just say, "I'll stop scrolling." Instead, make it harder to scroll, turn off notifications, move distracting apps off your home screen, or leave your phone in another room while working. Then, replace that habit with something small but positive, like reading a few pages of a book, stretching, or stepping outside for a short walk. This technique is often called habit stacking, linking a new, intentional habit to something you already do. For instance, if you make coffee every morning, you could stack a new habit onto it. While my coffee brews, I'll spend 1 minute focusing on my breath. By repeating this pairing, your brain starts to associate the new habit with a positive feeling. Over time, your dopamine system begins to reward the new behavior, making it easier to maintain. Be patient, change takes time. But remember, rewiring doesn't happen overnight. Your brain loves comfort and familiarity, so it will naturally resist change at first. You might slip back into old patterns sometimes, and that's perfectly normal. What matters isn't perfection. What matters is noticing the slip without judgment and gently returning to your intention. Pay attention to the way you talk to yourself during this process. Do you say things like, "I can't do this," or "I'm just too distracted"? Or can you shift to something kinder, like, "This is hard, but I'm learning," or "Every small choice counts"? The stories we tell ourselves shape the way our brains respond. If you believe change is possible, even slowly, your brain starts to act like it's true. That's the essence of what psychologists call a growth mindset, seeing every challenge as a chance to learn rather than a reason to give up. Celebrate small wins. Along the way, celebrate your progress, but do it mindfully. Instead of chasing instant gratification through shallow distractions, recognize the quiet satisfaction that comes from staying true to your intention. Notice how it feels to finish a focused work session without interruptions. Say no to a small temptation. Choose rest instead of scrolling. These moments might seem small, but they're evidence that you're changing, that you're reclaiming control over your attention and your habits. Ward, try this. Pause. Take one slow breath. Then ask yourself, is this choice helping me become the person I want to be? If the answer is yes, move forward with confidence. If it's no, know that every time you resist the pull and choose differently, you are literally reshaping your brain, one small, powerful decision at a time. And remember, this process isn't about being perfect or forcing yourself through sheer willpower. It's about kindness. Kindness to yourself as you grow, slip, learn, and try again. Because the truth about dopamine isn't just about chemistry, it's about awareness. It's about how you choose to engage with your impulses, how you respond to your desires, and how each moment gives you another chance to build the kind of life that feels true and grounded. Now, let's talk about something deeper, the kind of pleasure that doesn't come in a rush, but lingers. There's a form of satisfaction that doesn't spike like a firework. It settles. It doesn't flood your system in a quick burst and disappear. It grows slowly, gently, and stays with you. It's the quiet glow of a candle in a dark room, the steady warmth of a fire that burns through the night. This is the pleasure of enough. Have you felt it lately? In a world obsessed with quick wins, instant messages, and constant stimulation, this deeper form of pleasure can seem rare, almost hidden behind layers of distraction and noise. Yet, it's exactly this kind of steady, peaceful joy that holds the key to real satisfaction and lasting happiness. The power of deep work. Author Cal Newport calls it deep work, the ability to focus completely on something meaningful without interruption. It might be writing an essay, learning a new skill, solving a challenging problem, or creating something from the heart. Deep work isn't just about being productive, it's about being present. When you're fully immersed in what you're doing, time feels different. It slows down. You lose yourself in the task. Your attention becomes whole and undivided. You're not chasing dopamine spikes anymore. You're cultivating something steadier, a flow, a sense of quiet satisfaction that doesn't need external approval. This is what the pleasure of enough feels like. It's the feeling that comes when you've truly given yourself to the moment. When your attention is calm, steady, and sincere, not scattered or divided. It's not loud or dramatic. It's gentle. It doesn't scream for more. It simply whispers, "This is enough." The pleasure that builds resilience. Dopamine-driven pleasures, those fast, exciting highs, often fade quickly, leaving us restless, craving the next hit. But the pleasure of enough does the opposite. It anchors you. It brings peace instead of restlessness and fullness instead of emptiness. This kind of pleasure builds resilience. It roots you in the present moment and nourishes your sense of self. It reminds you that joy doesn't always need to be loud or spectacular. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, and deeply human. The power of stillness. Stillness plays a huge role in this. In our culture, we often confuse stillness with laziness or boredom, but that's a misunderstanding. Stillness isn't empty, it's fertile. When you sit quietly without reaching for your phone, when you let yourself do nothing for a few minutes, you give your brain time to breathe. You let your thoughts settle, your emotions even out, and your creativity rise to the surface. Stillness gives you space to reconnect with yourself, with what you really think, feel, and value. The beauty of slow living. This idea connects to something called slow living. Slow living is a lifestyle that values quality over quantity, depth over speed. It's about savoring your experiences instead of rushing through them. It challenges the belief that being constantly busy equals success. Instead, it encourages mindfulness, balance, and appreciation for the simple things in everyday life. Imagine savoring a warm cup of tea, feeling its heat between your hands, tasting each sip slowly, being fully there. Or walking in nature, noticing the sunlight on the trees, the sound of your footsteps, the rhythm of your breath. These may sound like small moments, but together they form the fabric of a grounded, peaceful life. They remind you that happiness isn't something to chase, it's something to notice. Balancing the chase with presence. Choosing a slower, more intentional way of living doesn't mean giving up ambition or technology. It's not about rejecting the modern world, it's about balancing it. You can still use tools, pursue goals, and achieve success, but do it from a place of calm focus, not compulsive chasing. Use dopamine as fuel, not as your master. When you balance the fast pace of modern life with moments of stillness, reflection, and deep focus, you create harmony between achievement and peace, between effort and rest. And that's where the true joy lies. Not in the rush of more, but in the calm of enough. Listening to your inner compass. You can still pursue your goals and embrace modern life. But when you begin to integrate deep work and mindful pauses, something changes. You create a rhythm that's not just productive, but sustainable, one that honors both your brain's chemistry and your soul's need for calm. So here's an invitation. The next time you find yourself rushing to finish the next task or reaching for your phone without thinking, just pause. Take a slow breath. Ask yourself, what if I slowed down? What if I gave this moment my full attention? Notice how that question feels in your body, the small release in your shoulders, the quiet awareness in your mind. This is what it means to rediscover the pleasure of enough. A kind of contentment that doesn't rely on external noise or endless achievements. It doesn't require new tools, fancy habits, or another productivity hack. It only asks for your presence, your willingness to choose depth over distraction, meaning over noise. And when you do that, something subtle but powerful happens. You reclaim a kind of freedom from the constant chase, from the illusion that happiness always lives somewhere in the future. You start to see that satisfaction isn't a faraway destination. It's a quiet companion walking beside you in the present moment. That, perhaps, is the most beautiful truth about dopamine. It doesn't control us. We can choose how to engage with it, with balance, with intention, with awareness. And when we do, we rediscover the quiet joy of enough. What does it mean to listen to your inner compass? When was the last time you asked yourself a simple but profound question, what am I really hungry for? Not just in the physical sense, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. What are you craving beneath all the noise of everyday life? What do you? In our modern world, full of distractions and dopamine-driven impulses, we rarely pause long enough to listen. We get swept away by habits, expectations, and the endless pursuit of more. But beneath all of that motion lies something steady and true, your inner compass. This compass is your intuition, your deep awareness, the quiet voice that whispers what feels right and what doesn't. Listening to it means creating space for self-awareness. Your awareness strengthens. Your inner voice becomes a gentle guide instead of a critic. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path offers instant gratification, quick, bright, and familiar. The other is slower, quieter, less certain, but rich with depth and meaning. Choosing the second path doesn't mean rejecting pleasure. It means redefining it, choosing the kind of pleasure that settles, that nourishes, that lasts. The kind that fills your soul, not just your schedule. Each time you choose this path, you are teaching your brain something new. You are rewiring your dopamine system, showing it that reward isn't only found in the next hit of excitement, but in alignment, purpose, and growth. And that's the real transformation. So, as we reach the end of this conversation about dopamine, carry this thought with you. Between every craving and every choice lies a moment of freedom, a moment that belongs entirely to you. In that moment, you get to decide. Will you rush ahead, or will you pause to listen? Will you follow the familiar pull of impulse, or trust the quiet wisdom of your inner compass? There is no perfect answer. Life will always be messy and unpredictable. But within that messiness, you hold the power to live with intention, to create a life that reflects who you truly are, not just what the world rewards. Because the truth about dopamine is not about control. It's about choice and the courage to make that choice again and again until the life you live feels like your own. Thank you for sharing this time with me on Mr. English Lab. I hope this episode has offered not only insight into dopamine, but also a space to pause, reflect, and perhaps choose a little differently as you move forward. Remember, the journey of understanding yourself is ongoing. Each moment is a chance to listen more deeply, act more wisely, and live more fully. Until next time, take care of your mind, be kind to your heart, and find peace in the space between craving and choice.